Welcome to part 12 in our series of presentations where we're looking at the Gospel of Matthew. This is entitled The World of the Miraculous. But before we move into that world, let's just look back where we were in the previous presentation. Here Matthew brings together three issues: finding what God has for us in life, finding God's best way for us in life, and then finding how to build our lives God's way. Focusing on this one just for the moment. We saw that God promises to provide all we will ever need to live our lives, but to live our lives reflecting the way of Jesus, drawing others to Jesus. He also promises to provide everything we need for every task He asks us to undertake. What a magnificent provision. But He doesn't promise that. He never promises to meet all the things we want, no matter how worthy they seem to us to be. And God always answers our prayers when we're seeking to share the objectives of Jesus. When we line up our lives with His ways, we identify with Him. We're seeking in His authority for His reputation, reflecting His nature, all centered on Jesus. God answers us for every need in these circumstances. Ask, seek, and knock. You could think of God's kingdom like that. It's when our lives are run the way God intended them to run. And He knows what's best. In the kingdom we are His children, our Father. And as His children we start to reflect His nature. His nature is love. Our agenda is the best for other people all the time. So Jesus pictured kingdom living, where we reflect His nature, which is love, and where our agenda is always seeking the best for others, because that's His agenda. His agenda is seeking the best for humanity. That's kingdom living. And Matthew notes that when Jesus had finished these sayings, there was quite a reaction from the people who heard them. He knew what He was talking about, but He also practiced what He was teaching. It showed in His lifestyle. Let's look at the picture so far overall. Matthew's very organized. He starts his gospel by introducing Jesus, the place of baptisms, the starting point of following Jesus, his own testing as he started out on the task that God had given him to do, the early months as he started this task. And then Matthew's brought together a whole collation of what Jesus taught about what life is like in the kingdom of God, when our lives are lived the way that God intended them to be. Chapter 5 to 7, Matthew's brought together a considerable amount of teaching. Jesus, the great teacher. Now he moves in the next two chapters to Jesus, the great healer. Now that's the context as we move into the world of the miraculous. That's what Matthew's demonstrated. When Jesus taught, it carried great authority. Now in the world of healing and the miraculous, the power of Jesus carries great authority. The two things go together. They're part of the overall package of kingdom living, the way of Jesus. Now we have the world of the miraculous. Now we're going to look in this presentation at chapters 8 and 9 in an overall sense In the following presentation, we'll look at the detail of some of the healing miracles. But let's just look at it overall. So with that in mind, let's move into the chapters. And here's a kind of framework that can guide us through it. 3 healing miracles. And the central idea that Matthew brings out here is Jesus is the Messiah, the sent one of God. What's our reaction? Following Jesus. A bit of teaching on discipleship. The next one demonstrates Jesus' utter authority, authority over the world of nature, over the world of the demonic and Satan, his power to forgive, his complete authority, and he moves forward in his teaching about discipleship, our response to all his authority and all that he has shown himself to be. And then 4 miracles, and these demonstrate the sheer power of Jesus. The power over death, the power to heal a disease that had been there for years, the power to release someone from blindness that had blighted a life, the whole of a life, someone who had been deaf and dumb, healing every disease. The power of Jesus. So that's a kind of framework. Let's look at the first little section at the beginning. This demonstrates the total confidence of the person to be healed. The only question in his mind was, is Jesus willing to do it? I know he can. And here's someone from a Roman background, a Roman officer. Total confidence that Jesus could heal, but he could do it at a distance. He didn't have to come into his house. In those days, Jews were not allowed to go into the homes of non-Jews. This man recognized it. No problem to Jesus, he could heal at a distance. And in the home of Peter, Jesus sees Peter's mother-in-law is ill with a fever, so he simply heals her. His reputation spreads far and wide. People come. There was no health service. There was no hope for medical cures. They came in desperation. Here was someone who could heal, give them back their lives. And every miracle was immediate. When Jesus declared it, it happened. Now, if we look at the work of the healing work of Jesus in an overall sense, he healed illness, he healed leprosy. Now, the word there covers a wide range of skin diseases for which there was no cure. And someone with this range of skin diseases would, in fact, be cast out of society because they were so infectious. And he heals those who are demonized. Now, we don't like that word. Don't ever use the word demon-possessed, that phrase. It's very misleading. The much better translation is demonized, which modern Bible translations use. Where agents of Satan have got into someone's life or are attacking someone's life and creating havoc. Now, if we look at it overall, not only in the work of Jesus, but in the whole of the New Testament, there's a complete consistency. They separated these 3 precisely, and they used different language. Demons were expelled. Illnesses were healed. Lepers were cleansed. And it's 3 different verbs, and the language is used consistently. So let's just look at it for a moment. When someone who came to Jesus who was demonized, he expelled the demons. Be expelled would be the literal translation of the original. I've put in the word. You'll see it in a moment. But when it came to leprosy, he said, be clean. Completely different word. With illness, he said, be healed. Jesus had no confusion between the 3. And in fact, in the whole of the New Testament, there was no confusion between the 3. There were different sources of problems. And the word there I said it would show is ekbalo. And you can, as you say it, ekbalo, be expelled. There's a kind of sound effect. That word's used a lot, 82 times. We tend to think this is something of the past. No, it's not. Satan's angels are still around creating havoc. And the way to deal with them is in the name and the authority of Jesus to say, be expelled, get out. Command, authority. Katharizo. Be clean. We get the word cauterize in English today. 30 times. Now there are 3 words in the original language that say be healed. Sozo means be rescued, which is a wide word. Iomai and therapeo, from which we get the word therapeutic in English today, they're more precisely medical. All are used to say be healed. Be released from the illness. There was no confusion in the mind of Jesus in the language he used or in the authors of the whole of the New Testament. They clearly distinguished these 3 and they dealt with them in different ways. We need to learn something from this today when we're praying for the healing of people. We're very often confused. The biblical writers were not. It's completely consistent. Now, towards the end of the stretch, Jesus comes in with a little bit of teaching. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I'll follow you wherever I go. Jesus replied, Foxes have dens, birds have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. The disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go and bury my father. But Jesus told him, Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. We must interpret this in the context of the day. Jesus was thronged with people. If crowds come to us, we tend to think it's wonderful. Jesus moved away from the crowds. We've got to learn something from that. They were holding him back. They just came for spectacular miracles, perhaps. But some were playing with the ideas maybe should follow him. But they wanted it on their own terms. Now we've got to interpret it in the context. Jesus was a wandering teacher with a group of friends. He didn't have a home. He didn't arrange accommodation in advance. He didn't know where his next food was coming from. Are you prepared for that? Says Jesus. Seems harsh. Let the dead bury their own dead. But this man was saying, I'll come and follow you, but wait till my father dies and I've got him buried. Then I'll be free. Perhaps he had responsibility for his father, or it was just an excuse. You see, there are hindrances to discipleship. Security of a home is great. Parental needs and pressures, we must not be irresponsible. There's the pull of family life. But in the context of following Jesus then, which is what the context is here, which means you are going to be part of a wandering group with everything uncertain, work it through before you think you're going to follow Jesus. We need to count the cost. Now there's something very important in this for today. The principle is not the detail. So often we present Jesus in our churches and our evangelism today as someone who solves all your problems, take away your sin, give you a new start in life. That's not the way Jesus would have presented it. He never did. Look at all his teaching. Follow Jesus, it will cost you everything. And for some of his followers, it cost them everything, their very lives. Are you prepared to come the way of Jesus, to come into the kingdom? Because when you come in, the way of your lifestyle will be turned upside down. There are costs to following Jesus. It's wonderful, it's glorious, it's liberating, it's fulfilling. But it means we've got to set aside the things that seem so precious to us in this life. The challenge is, are we up to it? Are we prepared to count the cost to follow Jesus? Jesus came as a wonderful healer. Looked like he was going to fix every disease. But to follow Jesus is costly. 3 miracles that just demonstrate Jesus' authority. Miracles always produce amazing reactions in people, positive or negative. They still do today. Stilling the storm, his followers just kind of rocked back mentally. What kind of man's this? Who can do this? They were beginning to realize that Jesus was more than just a human being. Expelling the demon of the man who was found in the graveyard, the far side of the lake. The local people, please go away. You're disturbing our lifestyle, our way of making our economy. You get that? When he healed the paralytic man who was brought in a bed, the religious pundit said, "You've no right to do this." But many other people said, "Isn't God wonderful?" There was a split reaction. This man who'd suffered so much was now released. He could now walk, earn a living, live a fulfilled life. Yeah, God's wonderful. But religious leaders so often throw a bucket of cold water over it. He's no right to do this. That kind of thing still happens today. Miracles always produce amazing reactions. They demonstrated the authority of Jesus over the world of nature, over the world of the demonic. Satan, anti-God, the one who tries to get at God by destroying humanity. The authority of Jesus over the world of sin and forgiveness, our rebellion against God. God can restore us. And the world of health and healing, where we've got bodies that work properly, minds that work properly. We're complete beings as God intended us to be. That's what Jesus wants. Jesus has authority to bring this around, and it's part of the kingdom, an integral part of kingdom living. Now, a little break from the miracles. Jesus went on from there. He saw a man named Matthew. Now, he's describing himself here. Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" They were the riffraff, the bottom of society in the eyes of the religious leaders. The bottom of the social heap. They'd compromised themselves by tainting themselves by collecting money on the part of the Roman Empire. On hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not the healthy need a doctor, but those who are ill. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Matthew would be a member of a team of tax collectors. That's the way they worked at the time. Now, he would have been able to read and write, and she was the right person to record this gospel. Now, they worked for Herod Antipas, but Herod Antipas was a kind of stooge for the Roman authorities and powers. They collected tax, but it was mainly tax on trade and commerce. Because things moving around the Roman Empire, the Romans taxed them, kept their coffers going, kept them in money. But as far as the leaders of the Jewish religion were concerned, they were socially unacceptable. They'd sold themselves, as it were, to the occupying power. They were collaborators. They were regarded as beyond the pale, utterly condemned by God in the eyes of the religious establishment. Yet Jesus asks Matthew to come and follow him. Jesus saw something in this man, and Matthew responded. Now, he was a most unpromising potential disciple. But then look at the 12 disciples that Jesus had chosen. They were most unpromising material on which to build the kingdom of God. But Matthew throws a party to celebrate. He'd been liberated from this terrible job. But as soon as he does that, the criticisms start to fly. The religious establishment doesn't like it. Look at the principles Jesus was laying out here. We treat others with respect. We don't live by religious rules and rituals. Now, there's far too much religious rules and rituals in the world today, across all religions. And one of the things it does is, they're the in-group who are acceptable, and they're the others, and they're often just condemned. And tax collectors were certainly condemned by the religious in-group in the days of Jesus. In modern language, we might say that. The doctor has to make contact with disease in order to help the people who are ill. Jesus came to rescue people. He came to invite people into his kingdom. And all could come in. You don't have to be part of the religious in-group. And Jesus mixed with the riffraff of the society of his day. The tax collectors and prostitutes is how it was often described, and they were regarded as the absolute beyond the pale group of Jewish society. Jesus mixed with them, and he brought them hope and a future, and acceptance, and a welcome. And he still does that today. Jesus is in the business of reaching out to the people who've made an utter mess of life, or whose lives are utterly messed up through no fault of their own. And Jesus wants to bring forward quality of living. He wants all to be welcomed and respected. We are all in the same boat, every single human being. We're all of equal value before God. We're all welcome in the kingdom. But that's the danger. If we're respectable, there's a terrible tendency to say, well, yes, and we think ourselves superior. And we start to condemn others. And the others may be in the position they're in through no fault of their own. That's a real problem today. It always has been. John the Baptist, his disciples, came and asked Jesus, "How is it that we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" Jesus answered him, "How can the guests of the bridegroom mourn while he is with them? The time will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them. Then they will fast. No one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch will pull away from the garment, making the tear worse. Now do people pour new wine into old wineskins? If they do, the skins will burst, the wine will run out, and the wineskins will be ruined. No, they pour new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved." The picture here is, and it's something that every lady in the society of the day would know, you had to repair clothes all the time. You couldn't just go to the supermarket and buy new clothes. And they knew perfectly well they didn't sew on unshrunk cloth. They would just tear it apart. The shrinkage would destroy the new garment. Similarly, people at the time would know you don't put new wine into old wineskins. Old wineskins have served their purposes. They don't last forever. They go brittle. They start to crack. Old wineskins only survive if they're kept away from new wine. I'll ponder that for a moment. Old wineskins only survive if they're kept away from new wine. Jesus was bringing in something that was radically new, different. He was not trying to patch up the old religious system. And so often when we look at churches right across the Western world today, we're trying to patch up the system that is our denominational system and improve it. That's not what Jesus would do. He would throw out the system to bring in something radically new. And we're desperately trying to keep our old wineskins, our old systems alive. But it means we're keeping them away from the new wine, the life of Jesus. Oh, we've got to be very careful about this. There's deep thoughts in this teaching, a deep challenge to us. See, bringing it together, we start following Jesus when we're aware we need something. We're seeking something better. We often don't know exactly what we're wanting. And when we find Jesus, it's a time of feasting, not fasting, celebration. He's given us liberty, joy, peace, power, wonder, healing. So it's characterized by exuberance, vitality. Where is that in our churches today? And in all this, your religious pedigree counts for nothing. Your background counts for nothing. We're all equal. We're all equally in need of Jesus. Your social status counts for nothing. A tax collector, a prostitute, they're all equally welcomed and they're equally valuable before God. You see, Jesus breaks the conventional forms because he values people as people. Not by what they've done, by their failures, or by life circumstances. Yes, following Jesus often means a loss of security, home life, and social respectability. There are costs, there are penalties, but the gains are glorious and wonderful. That's kingdom living. That's the wonder of following Jesus. To the final set. Demonstrations of sheer power, the power of Jesus to release people, heal people, raise people from the dead whom Satan has taken prematurely. The dead girl, the father said, just put your hand on her and she will live. She lived. The woman in desperation, if only I can touch his cloak, I'll be healed. You see, it wasn't permissible for a woman to approach a man in the days of Jesus. Do it secretly, otherwise I'll be in trouble. The blind man, Jesus looks at him and said, do you believe I'm able to do this? And the man responds positively. But the demonized man was in no position. He was controlled and gripped by demonic forces, brought to Jesus, and released to total manhood. The power of Jesus to transform lives, and it all happened instantly. The diversity of the healings of Jesus, no clear method, no clear approach, but the wonder that everybody who came to him to seek healing, no one was turned away and rejected. That's the world of the miraculous. But where does faith fit into this? Faith is widely misunderstood. The problem is we tie it in with the word belief because we don't have a verb to faith, so we use the word to believe. And that carries with it ideas that it's something intellectual. We've got to believe certain things are true. Now, believing certain things are true on the basis of evidence is excellent, but the word in the original, the word faith, isn't an intellectual word. It doesn't relate to things that you accept intellectually. It's a word of action, a word of response. Jesus says something. He speaks to us. He makes himself known to us through someone else or through something we've read. We respond. We take action. Faith is a word of response, a word of action. Response to someone. In this case, to Jesus. So Jesus could say to the woman who'd come, your faith has healed you. Now her faith didn't heal her in the direct sense. Jesus healed her. His power, his authority brought the healing. But faith was her response to Jesus. If only I could touch the edge of his cloak. She was responding. She took action. She worked her way behind the people through the crowds to get close to him. Socially unacceptable. She responded to Jesus. She responded to all she'd seen, all that she'd heard. She wanted his touch. She wanted his healing. You see, our response makes it possible for Jesus to heal. That's what he's saying. But in fact, there's something quite subtle in this. If you look at it in the original language, and I can't guarantee to say it exactly with the right accentuation that it would have been said in, he pistis su sisokan se. It kind of rings off the tongue. You see, if we're going to receive from Jesus, we've got to be willing to respond to Jesus. That's a respond on his terms. We've got to be willing to take action. He's not a magician who just does things for us at a distance. Jesus offers us everything in the kingdom. A fulfilled life, a purpose in life, a destiny, resources. But he also offers us healing. It's an integral part of the package. And that little phrase just rings off. People would remember it. Your faith has healed you. Because faith is our willingness to respond to Jesus. What a magnificent picture. Jesus had come. He came to deal with humanity's rebellion against God. We all think we can run our lives better, taking our own decisions. And looking at history, we don't half make a mess of it. Jesus came to bring in the kingdom where people choose to live God's way. And when we live God's way, we live the best way. All are equal. Doesn't matter your background or what you've done or not done. Religious pedigree, social pedigree, they count for nothing. He has shown us what kingdom living means in his teaching. He's shown us what kingdom living means in his healing. Because he's in the business of releasing restoration to us totally, as total human beings. Released from the power of sin, sickness and death, that's true. But released to, positively, radiant, positive kingdom living. He strips out the things that hold us back. And he releases us to the things that take us into a great future. What a package. What a picture. What a presentation. And it's ours, irrespective of who we are or what we've done. But we need faith. We need to be willing to respond. And to come and do it Jesus' way. And what Matthew has shown here is the reaction of the crowds. He's shown some incredible faith responses. People willing to respond and put themselves out at great cost in order to receive from Jesus. He shows us something of the deepening desire for discipleship and how it sometimes goes adrift. But he also shows us the growing opposition from religious leadership. An awful lot of that going around today. And there are hints at the political opposition that would eventually seek his downfall. And it finishes with that. Jesus went through all their towns and villages. Remember, he was in the northern part of the kingdom. He was away from the religious centre of Jerusalem. He went through all their towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, the gathering place for the Jewish people, proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and healing every disease and every sickness. Anyone who came to Jesus who wanted healed was healed. The good news of the kingdom: when we live God's way, we're liberated to quality living. But he looked out and he saw the crowds. Matthew describes it. He had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. They were looking for something better. They were longing for something better. They lived close to poverty. They were under an occupying power. They didn't quite know what they wanted or where they were to go or what they were to do. Their religious leaders weren't really helping them. I want us to focus on one or two thoughts from this as we finish this presentation. Into that situation, Jesus comes with authority, teaching, proclaiming, healing. He comes against all the things that blight humanity. And when we're willing, when we respond, he releases humanity into a new quality of life. And it's because his heart went out to them. That captures the meaning of that word. And that captures the meaning of the heart of God. God looks out on you and me. He simply wants the best for us, and he sees us messing up our lives, and he longs to do things for us, if we were willing. That's faith, that's response. Oh, let us come to God and ask for his direction, ask for his way. Come to Jesus, respond to him. And the meaning carried behind these words there is a group of people who are pushed around without direction. They were surviving, trying just to survive, bring up a family in relative poverty. Surviving it, they didn't know what it was all about. The religious systems of the day were giving them no help and direction that was meaningful. And they're under an occupying power. There's pictures here for society in the West today. And God in his compassion wants to rescue us through Jesus. We must respond to his authority. He taught, he proclaimed, he healed. And we can respond to him today. No wonder his close friends looked at him and they said that one to the other. They were beginning to realize that in Jesus there was someone more than a human being. He was totally human, yes. But there was something more to Jesus. And they were beginning to understand what it was all about. What a magnificent picture. In the next presentation, we're going to look at these miracles in a little bit more detail. We've just looked at the overall broad brush picture. We'll come to it in more detail in part 13.